We are listening to testimony from CIA Director John Brennan before the Senate Intelligence Committee. They were prepared remarks from the CIA Director prior to questions he is now taking from committee members, in which he spoke to the continuance of territorial losses in Syria and Iraq on the part of the Islamic State, which has thus perhaps motivated an increased radicalization push in the West as ISIS looks to infiltrate the West with a large cadre of Western fighters, as he said, via refugee flows and other smuggling apparatuses, as well as an increased focus on propaganda over all matter of social media platform. We do want to bring in now our Jeff Pegues, who has been listening along with us. And Jeff, what struck you about the director's remarks?
Well, you know, a lot of what he said, frankly, we have heard before, and we've heard the warnings from European officials and others about ISIS fighters leaving the battlefield and fanning out across the West, Europe especially, and then trying to make it here to the U.S. So we've heard that before, but he also talked, yes, he talked about the gains in taking territory away from ISIS, but he also talked about his concern about Libya and how that is becoming a bigger base of operations for ISIS. He talked about training camps there along the coast and how that's a concern. And anyone who's followed terrorism over the years knows that when you talk about training camps and issues like that, that harkens back to Al-Qaeda and how Al-Qaeda had a base of operations in Afghanistan pre-9/11 that allowed them to get stronger and to train. And so that is in part why he is so concerned about Libya becoming a base of operations for ISIS. And he also talked about ISIS spreading in other spots across the Middle East and, frankly, the globe. And that is a concern, Josh.
It's interesting, Jeff. He spoke of the Islamic State's search to centralize its network, spoke of it almost in really business terms, as you mentioned, consuming in the Sinai, for instance, which he called the most active territory for Islamic State dealings, that ISIS went into the Sinai and consumed an active group that perhaps was responsible for the downing of a Russian aircraft there. As you mentioned, Boko Haram is now ISIS of West Africa. He also spoke of a recent trip he took to Singapore, and he's seeing the increasing centralization in Southeast Asia of the Islamic State as well. Then how then to combat an organization that is not just centralizing, that is not just looking to perhaps streamline its organization, but also, as he was discussing the question from the Vice Chair Dianne Feinstein, the Democrat from California, with regard to another fundamental question that we've seen here with regard to the San Bernardino shooters and the government's case against Apple, that he said that the government must come to grips with its need to access devices, even if that does violate certain fundamental questions of privacy.
Well, yes, again, that goes back to the legal battle between Apple and the FBI. And while that was about just one iPhone, according to the FBI, the tech industry, of course, saw it as a broader dilemma. And that's sort of what he's getting at there, is this idea that investigators, they, in a way, and especially the tech industry will say this, they want to have access to these phones because it gives them valuable intelligence to prevent an attack. It is certainly helpful to have an iPhone that they can get into after an attack, but really the goal is to get into this technology so they can see what is in the planning stages. They are asking for more tools to, in their view, more effectively carry out their mission, to more effectively do their jobs, because what they are now doing is fighting ISIS on two fronts. You have the propaganda machine, the inspiration arm, and then you have the skilled fighters who've been on the battlefield, and they're fanning out across the globe as these trained killers. And so intelligence agencies now across the globe, certainly in the West, Europe, United States, are trying to counter that. Well, how do you stop that? And the only way to stop these trained killers who are coming from the battlefield is to have the intelligence to stop it, because they are using these devices to communicate. And they're often going to Telegram with its encrypted system to communicate their plans. And so law enforcement is trying to figure out a way, well, how do we get into this so we can have better intelligence about what they are planning before it happens?
Certainly a question that we are seeking to answer in the aftermath, certainly of the Orlando terror attack as well. I know, Jeff Pegues, you will be continuing to monitor the director's comments, as will we here. We thank you for your time, and we will be back with you.